Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Bava Metzia, daf Tes Vav. We're going to begin on Tes Vav Amud Aleph, about 10 lines from the top. Bein lo Rava, Bein lo Rabba, Bar Rav Huna. So we were learning on the previous daf that if a person would sell a field to his friend and it turns out that it wasn't his, in other words, the mocher, the seller, was actually a ganav. So there's a machlokas Rav and Shmuel. Rav said, Yesh Lomos, obviously the lokach is going to get his money back, but in addition to that, if there was any shvach, if there was any improvements on the field during that time, for example, they fertilized it or they built a fence, so then the lokach is able to collect from the mocher the improvements. However, Shmuel says no. He says, even though it's true, most yeshlo, you will get your money back, but the lokech will not get the shvach. Shvach ein lo. So that's what we were discussing on the previous daf. And we posed two different shitas because it mentions on the bottom of the amud regarding achilas peros. It says that if someone stole a field from his friend, and it's taken away, it says that the Karen, the principal, is collected from the Chasm Shubadim, and it says clearly that the Peros are collected from Bnei Chayrin. And we're assuming in that case, our thought process and the question was that the field was stolen from his friend, and it was sold to someone else, and there was improvements, which ended up becoming a question on Shmuel, who says that there's no shvach, so knows a machlokas Rabbi and Rabba. Rabba said that maybe we're talking about a situation where the field was stolen, and it was filled up with fruits, and he ate all those fruits, and then he destroyed the field. He dug bodai, shichin, and maidais, and then the nigzel wants to come, so he can collect from the chasim shubadim, the Karen, the principal, and when it comes to the nigzel will collect peros from Bnei Chayrin. So you end up having again, the nigzel, the one who owned the field, will get for the principal, he should be collect the chasmi shubadim. He can't just take the land back because the land was destroyed, and the nigzel will go and collect the fruits that were on the field that were consumed from Bnei Chayrin. That's all it's referring to. And Rabbi Bar Chana said that it was referring to a situation where the land was confiscated, as we saw in Bava Kama, that if a person steals a field and then you have these an akum coming and they confiscate lands and you point to this property, so then you're responsible to provide another field, and therefore because of that's what's referring to, that the Gazlan will have to pay the Karen from the Chasim Shubadim, because the land was taken away. It's not, they don't have it anymore. Okay. So, and however, the Peros from Bnei Chayrin. So with that not such brief introduction, let's start the Gemara. Bein lo Rabba, Bein lo Rabba, Bar Rav Huna. Regardless of either of those positions, that Rashi says, Demukmi Gavias Karen min Hagazlan, that the collection of the principal from the Gazlan, Benigzel, because again, either because the field was destroyed, so the nigzel can't just take the field back, and it can't be that, it was confiscated. Hamilva pehu v'tarpa mimishubadi. So this is considered to be, as the Gemara says, like an oral loan. Hamilva peh in ugav mishubadim. So how could it be that, according to Rava, he said, oh yeah, we're talking about the field was destroyed, and therefore the nigzel can collect the Karen from the chasim shubadim. Or Rabba said that the field was confiscated and you can collect from the Karen from the chasim shubadim. They both say that, but this is considered akin to a milva peh, and therefore you should not be able to collect from chasim shubadim. So achmayaskinin kishama badin, the hadar zavin. So what ended up happening was there was a mada badin, says Rashi, kainim shemachan chasim, before the field was sold. Givan dechivu beisdin, since the beisdin was mechayev this gazlan, easily kala. Now there is a coal v'havli kimil v'bishtar, and therefore because of zavin, if he sells it afterwards, so then it is, you could collect from the chasim shubadim. So Yihachi Paris Nami Kishoma Badin Yihachi Paris Nami. So why don't we say the same thing, that you should be able to collect the Paris from the Chas Mishabanim because there was a Gemar Din and there was Hamad Badin. And therefore, for that reason, you should be able to collect the Paris also the Chas Mishabanim. Remember, says no, Kishoma Badin al Karen V'Lamad Badin al Paris. There was only case regarding the principle of the land, but not the fruits. So, my paskil, okay, why would you say such a thing? We're dealing with the exact same field, so if in fact there's fruits there, so then why would it be there was only a madabadin on the Karen but not on the Paris? Normally, kitava inish, when a person makes a claim, karnatava beresha, the first thing they do is they want their land back. Yes, and then afterwards they could deal with the Paros. So it is possible that in fact there was only a madabadin on the Karen but not on the Paris. But Savar Shmuel, does Shmuel really hold a kech megazlan leisle shvacha, that if you purchase something from a gazlan and you made improvements, as we said, the lokech made improvements, so then when the nigzel takes away, so of course the lokech can go and get his Karen back, Karen Yeshlo, but Shmuel says that shvach enelo. Does he really hold that? B'haimer Shmuel or Rav China bar Shilas, we had this before. When it comes to a sefer imluch, he needs to first consult the person, uksaiv, and then only afterwards will he write shufar shvach l'peri. So it's looking at Rashi, Kishata Kaisav Star, Hamolich B'moicher, you have to consult the seller, Imi Kabbalov Lahagvos Lokech Mishpar Nechasav. That if you're willing to accept upon yourself to collect to the buyer from the good properties, Karnu Shvacha Uperi Imi Yitrafu Mimenu, if it's taken away from you. The idiots, etc. So we see over here that we see clearly that this is telling us that there is shvach. Subamai. What are we talking about? Iba bal chayiv. We're talking about a situation of a loan. So islay peri. What do you mean? Is there fruits in that case? Yom Shmuel bal chayiv gaivas a shvach in of paris lo. He collects shvach, but he doesn't collect the paradise. Elolab lekech megazlan. We're talking about a situation where it was purchased from a gazlan, and therefore we see he does get shvach. So how could it be that Shmuel says shvach ein loy? So, and the reason why, and we'll understand this better in the Teretz, the reason why Shmuel holds there's no din of shvach is because if it was taken, if the loikeach, again, he paid for this field, which it almost looks like he's lending the gazlan, the moicher, money, and then he's going to take the money back. But now, if he also gets other monies, he gets shvach. For the shvach, it looks like ribis, like he gave money, and now all of a sudden he's getting more money back. And of course, he made those improvements, but again, it looks like to the naked eye, he gave money to someone, and then he ended up getting more money back. So, Rav Yosef, karka. It's possible that we're dealing with a situation where there's land. If the seller reimburses with land, the seller meaning the gazlan, then it doesn't look like ribis anymore. Therefore, we will say yeshel shvach. So therefore, if the gazlan or the meicher has land, then he will hold that shvach yeshlo. Understand? We know that you can't lend out wheat, and then they'll return the same amount of wheat back, even though you gave a saw of wheat and you return a saw of wheat. So it's called saw. But the problem is, based on fluctuations of the market, it could end up looking like a loan, and this loan could look like ribis. If the wheat per saw changes, so saw is not allowed. So the fact that you would have land because it looks like ribis, so we don't say that it makes any difference if you're being reimbursed with land. The reality is it's not allowed. So why would we say this is acceptable? It's different between a loan and a sale. When it comes to a loan, so that's when we're more concerned that it looks like ribis, and therefore we're going to be more strict. However, when it comes to a sale, so in that situation we're not as concerned of ribis. So therefore, as long as there's karka and we're dealing with a sale, so in this case the lokech can get the shvach, assuming the meicher gives back land. He gives a different teretz. He says that maybe we're talking about that he was kanim yado al shvach. The seller performed a kinyan regarding the shvach, and therefore he was mechuyev to return the shvach at the time of the sale, before anything. So therefore it's no longer, again, looks like Rabbi. Same question. Again, when are we going to be lenient when it comes to a sale? But when we're dealing with a loan, then we're more strict because it looks more like a loan. So normally sabasa is a problem, but that's only when it comes to a loan. When it comes to a sale, we're more lenient. Either b'makom sheish karka, where the moicher sells and gives him back the land, or kashikanim yadai, where the seller performed a kinyan. Okay, fine. Let's look at question 5. V'ma yafe. Okay, let's just continue. Actually, okay. Gufel. Going back. Omer Shmuel. Bal chayiv goyves a shvach. So the din is that a bal chayiv, someone who owes money, he can is owed money, can collect the based on the improvements. Omer Ravatei, then I'll prove to you that this is something in which is allowed, that he can collect, and you can't. The buyer cannot say that I'm the one that made the improvements. He can't say that, but rather he could still collect from the shvach. How do we see this? Because look at what's written when it comes to the document of a shtar mecher. This is what the seller writes to the buyer. No'ikum v'shapi v'adchi v'am reik zvini, that I will ashbe is like to be silent and to cleanse this sale. Its principle as well as shvach. What's the key word here? Which I'm mikabel upon myself. So basically, in the shtar itself, it mentions that the Baal Chayv is able to collect the shvach, because that's what's written in the shtar itself. If that's true, that's the lashon of what's written in a shtar mechira, so a matana, when it comes to giving a gift, in which we don't write this entirety of this statement, person doesn't accept achrayis when he's giving something. He'll give achrayis when he sells something, but not as a gift. So does it mean that the creditor cannot get the shvach? As you're telling me, there was no guarantee. I'm like, you're right. In fact, that's true. When it comes to a matana, that does not take place. A person will not generally write achrayis. He's giving you a gift. All of a sudden, he has to start worrying about if it's taken away. No, he'll do that when it comes to a sale, but not by a matana. So, do we actually see that the kayach of a matana is stronger than mecher? I'm like, yafa v'yafa. Indeed, in Echanami, you're right. 100%. Amr Rav Nachman, hamasnisim asayale. So we actually have in the sugya that will to support you that a Baal Chayv collects the shvach, and this will be support l'Rav Shmuel v'hu nechavrin. He actually is not going to use this as a rye, but he's going to use it for something else. The sign it. A person who sells again a field to his friend, and it ends up going out of his hands. Kashu goiva, when he collects, goiva as a keren l'chas mishubadim, because again the buyer ended up losing the field, so he can collect from the chas mishubadim. Ushvach goiva l'chas m'nechayrin, and the shvach that was put into this field, he can collect from m'nechayrin. V'hu nechavrin moikemo b'milechrin. He says something different. He's talking about b'loikech megazlan. He says the situation where you buy something from a gazlan that the nigzel certainly is able to be tarif the shvach, fine, but maybe not when it comes to a Baal Chayv. Tani idach. Let's say you had sold field and it got improved. And the Baal Chayv comes in and takes away the field. Kishu gaiva, when you collect, if the improvements are greater than his expenses, he takes that. From the land. Vayitzim b'Baal Chayiv, and the expenditures from the Baal Chayiv. If let's say his expenditures are more than the shvach, Eino Ella Hoitza Shir Shvach Baal Chayiv. All he does is get the shear of the Hoitza, the expenditures from the Baal Chayiv. So when did he establish this? If you want to tell me, he's talking about where a person is buys it something from a gazlan kasheration. So that's going to be a problem with what we said before. Shmuel right? So according to the Shita Shmuel, there is no shvach for a buyer who buys property from a gazlan. We don't say that. Again, there may be exceptions, but generally we don't do so because of issues of ribis. He says shvach ein lo. However, iba bal chayiv, we're talking about where there is a debt. So kasheration. There's a kasheration of a seifa. Dear Mishmul bal chayiv goyves a shvach, because it says the bal chayiv collects shvach. So Iboy said l'kech megazlan. So maybe actually we're talking about a case of l'kech megazlan. I thought we said I thought we said that the ein lo shvach, you can't collect the shvach. Yeah, but we said also before that there's two exceptions. Kigain sheshul karka. If the seller reimburses with land, again, it no longer looks like ribis. As we said before, if the seller performed a kinyan at the time of the sale, committing again to pay for the shvach if the property is seized. So it doesn't, again, resemble ribis. So again, you can just establish it that we are talking about. Normally, you're right. Normally, Shmuel says shvach ein lo when it comes to a lekech megazlan. However, if we're dealing with the meicher has karka or kishkan miyado, then we say yes. Iboy saying babal chayiv. Maybe we are talking about a case where it was a loan. Lo kasha kam shvach, as we continue to test vava midbeis, it depends. You could possibly say one is shvach hamigil ksafim, which reaches the shoulders. Kam shvach shein hamigil ksafim, says Rashi. What does that mean? Hamigil ksafim. We had this before. Karov likatzer. It means it's close to being harvested. It's almost going to be off the field anyway. El shedayin srich on the karka. It still needs the land a bit. So havilu keperos gemurin. That has the status of like complete ripened fruit. And the din is that the Baal Chayiv cannot collect cannot collect from this without the expenses. What are you talking about? This happens all the time. That we still allowed to be collected, even at that state. When is it owed to him the amount of the land and the shvach? That's one thing. The other one is he's owed to him only the amount of the land, and the shvach is more. By giving him you can give the shvach, and he'll be done with it basically. So it says Rashi, you can just give him the shvach, and that would be sufficient. That's only good if you hold that if the lokech, the buyer, has money, that he can't buy off the Baal Chayiv, so that he won't take away his land. That he could pay him off. Namely, he could say like this: if I did have money, all right, I would be able to basically pay you back for the entirety of the land. If I don't have money, so at least give me a piece of the property, the amount of this shvach. Right, so talking about we're talking about a situation where the seller designated it already. So therefore, the buyer, as we're going to see, has no rights to it because the seller designated that this would be specific to this case, to this situation. And a potiki is you can only collect from this. Okay, let's look at question 15. How do we say that a gift on some level is stronger than a mecher? So as we saw, when it comes to a Baal Chayiv, goyves a shvach b'mecher, you can collect the shvach, the improvements, when it comes to a sale, because that's what's written in the document. But if there's improvements and then the land is taken away, so then you don't that person who is gifted this does not get the shvach. Because when it comes to a sale, the seller makes this promise. But because as we saw in the girsa, it's actually inclusive of shvach, that he's promising that I will give you, if it's taken away, the shvach. Of course, this only is referring to a situation of a mecher, but not when it comes to a matana. Okay, let's look at TB2. Be'elu ofanim. In which cases, Maida Shmuel the Lekech Megazlin Gaives a Shvach V'loi Mixi Karibis. So I wrote Im Yeshul Karka V'az Loi Nixi Karibis or Kishikana Miyadoi. So these are the two answers, which again we saw clearly in those two situations. When it comes to a situation of Zvini, we're going to be lenient and say that you are able to do this, and it's not Mixi Karibis, that doesn't look like Ribis. TB2. Okay. All right, let's now see the next piece, which is connected to the Masechtas Kedushin. Pretty famous Gemara coming up right here. So it says like this. Let's say you have the person who bought from the Gazlan, and he mamish knew the guy was a Gazlan at the time of the Mechira. So what's the din? So in this, and he started making improvements on the land and everything like that. So Amar Rav, Moiseshlo Shvach Einlo. So Rav, who before said that you also get the Shvach, but in this case, because you, the Loikech, knew what you were getting yourself into before purchasing this land, you knew it was stolen, so therefore you're not going to get the Shvach. Shmuel Omer Afilu Mois Einlo. Shmuel says you're not even going to get the money. You're going to get nothing, because you as the Loikech understood that you were getting yourself into a situation where you shouldn't have done this. So Shmuel Omer Afilu Mois Einlo. So b'may kimifki. What's the machlok? So Rav Savar. Why does Rav say it is a good sale that you get your money back, not shvach? Because Rav holds Rav Savar Adam Yodeya Shekarka Ein Loi. He knew that this karka was not this guy's. And therefore he gave him his money for this land as a pikadon. So therefore, when you have a pikadon, it's still mine. So then afterwards, when the nigzel took the field back, so he has to give me back the money I gave him. So namely, l'shum pikadon. So why didn't he say that? Because several of a kabul, maybe he wouldn't have accepted it if he used that lashon. Shmuel Savar, why does he get nothing back? Because Adam Yodeh Shekarka Ein Lo. Again, he knew that this land was not his, this guy's. The governor lo shomatana. So he gave this money as a gift. It must be that's what it was, and therefore that's the reason why he can't get his money back. But namely l'shomatana. So when he says a gift, ksiflei milsa, this ganav is going to be embarrassed to accept it. Okay, kind of hard to imagine that this ganav really cares, but that's a svara. But we learned this already in a few other masechtas. A person goes up to his sister and says, I would like to marry you. Now, obviously it's not a kedushin, because you can't marry your sister. So Rabbi Eimer, what's the deal with the money? He says you have to give back the money. She has to give back the money to her brother. Shmuel Eimer Mois Matana, it's a gift. Rabbi Eimer Mois Chayzrin, because Adam Yideshin Kedushin talks about Chaysai. Obviously, you can't marry your sister, so why'd you give it to her? You gave her the money just so she should hold on to it, but now she has to give it back. So and again, several maybe she wouldn't have accepted the bikadin, but if it was done this way, she'll accept it. Shmuel Eimer Mois Matana. Really, the money was given to the sister. She can keep it. It's like a gift. Why? Same idea. Because everyone knows, again, you can't marry your sister. So give it as a gift. So when do you say that to her? Because it's embarrassing. So why do we need these two cases? What are the two cases? Question 6. And then it says, so one is, again, if you're Mekadosh, your sister, do you get the money back? And the other one is where the loikech knew that this land was stolen. Will he be able to get his money for the land? The moiseshel or moisenlo. So why do we need these two cases? They sound pretty much the same language. So why can't you just deduce one from the other? You can't, because sricha di'it mar baha kamer Rav. Maybe only in that case Rav says his din is that it's considered to be a pikadain. Why? This is a total stranger. Why would he give to this gazlan, to this moicher, all this money? You don't give a gift to some stranger. Over here, it's your sister, so maybe it is a matana. A person would give gifts to his sister. Maybe only there because it's a sister that it's a matana of a bahal. When it's a stranger, that's considered pikadon sricha. Okay, all right. So that's question 6, which is also question TA1. Beilu beis mikroim nechu Rabbi Shmuel im moyis matano pikadon. Okay. So the question 6 over here is a little bit more. It asks us also to explain that srichas. Okay. All right. So that's the sricha. Now, Bein Rav, Diarmer Pikadin, Bein Shmuel, Diarmer Matana, whether you hold of Rav or Shmuel, whether it's considered like a Pikadin or Matana that you can get it back or not, Hai Lu'ara, B'mai Kanachis, U'eperis, Heicha Achel. So, if we're dealing again with land which was stolen, so what's this guy's thought process over here? How could we possibly say, again, he was Gomer B'Naslin Shum Pikadin. He gave to the moicher this money as a pikadon, and Shmuel said that he gave it as a gift. Says Rashi, if you had any of these thoughts, what right would you have to then go and work the field, and for that matter, if there's shvach, to eat its fruits? Obviously, it sounds like we're talking about a situation where he was not knowledgeable in this whole situation, and maybe the whole machlokas Rav and Shmuel is a totally different reason. That's nothing to do with that he knew what he was doing, because if he knew what he was doing, then what was he doing in the field working it? So Savar Ana Echas Ara, he thought like this: I'm going to go and work in the land. The Eved, I'm going to work again, do things. The Echel Begaven, I'll eat the fruits. Kihechi the Havika Ovid Ihu, so that the Ganav will do it too. Chayasi Mairi. When the master of the owner of the field comes, Zuzoy Nahav Rav Diar Bikada Bikada L'Shmuel Diar Matana. So again, the question was, if he knew it was stolen, why would he go and put money into the field and work the land? So again, maybe his thought process was that he would still be able to do so. It says Rashi. Rav Diar Bikada Bikada Aliba the Rav Mifarshinan the high Maimer Omer Zuzin Nehavu Bikadin. This money was given as a gift. Ushmul Mifarshinan the high Omer Zuzin Nehavi Matana. That this was considered to be, again, as a Bikadin, as a gift. Omer Rabba Hilchasas. What's the halacha? Yeshlo Mais Yeshlo Shvach. Now, when it comes to a normal situation, when the loikech buys land from the moicher, who is a gazlan, maybe didn't know about it. So the din is like Rav, that not only will you get the mois, but you're also going to get the shvach, unlike Shmuel. And that's v'afal b'shlo pirish lo asa shvach. Even if we did not specify, because on Yud Dalam and Beis it says that maybe the reason of Shmuel saying ein lo shvach is the lo pirish shvach avahacha hapirish lo dilma tamid Shmuel ki b'naleisli karka mixi karibis. So clearly, it has nothing to do with whether or not you express yourself. Regardless, the din is you will be able to get your shvach back. Okay. Now, hikerba she'ena shalo. What about this case we just saw? The situation where the loikech knew it was stolen. So again, we're going to see we hold like Rav. V'locha mois, and again, if he took the money, yesh lo shvach ve'ein lo achraya. Yesh lo shvach. Okay. So again, we see clearly it is like Rav. Rav holds that V'lokcha mois yesh loy shvach ein loy. Okay, that's how you're supposed to read it. So again, that's like Rav. Achrayis tois sefer who, and the next is going to be like the shita of the Rabbanon. In other words, if you do not have anything on the star, because according to Shmuel, he said that by shibud tzarich limolech, that the scribe needs to ask whether or not you want achrayis, which means it must be that achrayis is lav tois sefer. We hold that it is. Therefore, whether it's written or not, it doesn't matter. There'll still be a shiva in the chasim. There'll still be a lien. Bein b'shtari halva, bein b'shtari mekach hamemcher. That doesn't matter if it's a loan or a business transaction. The same thing. We still say that achrayis is tois sefer. B'amini Shmuel Merav. So he asked the following question: Chazer v'lacha mebalam harishonim mahu. So let's say the Ganav went and buys the land from the real owner after the Ganav, sold it to the Lokeach. Could the Ganav now act as the original owner? So again, the Ganav stole the land, okay, sold it to this Lokeach. Now normally, again, the Nigzel comes around, he can get his land, he gets the Shvach. Well, what happens if the Ganav now buys the land from the Nigzel? So the Nigzel is now completely out of the equation. The question is, can the Ganav now act as the original owner? So Malay, what did he purchase? All the schusim. So my timer. So what was the reason why the Ganav purchased it from the Nigzel? So Rav Zutra Omer Nichle do Nikri Gazlan, because he doesn't want to be called a Gazlan, right? So after all, he knew that, let's say the Nigzel was going to come, he was going to call him a Gazlan, so therefore the Gazlan the Moicher went and he bought it from the Nigzel, so this way he won't be called a Gazlan. Rav Ashi Omer Nichli Deleko Behem Nuse. It's worthy that I'm going to be considered to be trustworthy. So now, similar concept. I don't want people to start thinking I'm not trustworthy, that I sold your property. It turns out it wasn't. So my binayu binayu to mes lokech. The difference is what happens if the lokech died. Says Rashi. After the Gazlan bought the land from the original owner, the Gazlan went. The Gazlan ba hoitzim mibanav. So he says like this. And the Lokech died. So again, what happened was that since the Nigzel should be able to get the land back from the Lokech. Now, if the Gazlan bought the land from the Nigzel, so now the Gazlan can get the land back from the Lokech. Okay. However, what happens if the Lokech died? So now, what's the din? Can you get it from the Lokech's children? This land, can the Ganav get it from the Lokech's children? So Loman Diamer, Nichale the Likuri Gazlan. I don't want to be called a thief. So as Kasain the Madam says, Hamesle. So this Lokech is no longer going to call you a thief. It says Rashi Lokech, as he died. Umi Yichar Penu. Oid, who will humiliate you? Hilkach lo nischamin lezeh il hamida biyadai. Fine. Mandir Menichle, the lake of Mehamanuse, I want him to consider me trustworthy. Bahadi B'nei B'nin, Nichle, the lake of Mehamanuse, I want them to also consider me trustworthy. So, 1 second. So, instead of Karli B'nilo Kech Gazlana. Okay, so what are you talking about? So, the Lekech died, so he's not going to call you a Gazlan, but his kids are going to call you a Gazlan. So, that's not a nafkamina. So, Ella Ika B'nayu Demes Gazlan. Not when the Lekech died, because in that situation it's not going to make any difference, because you're not going to want to be called a Gazlan, you want to be considered trustworthy. But what happens if the Gazlan himself dies? So can his children collect this land now from the Lekech? No one wants to be called a thief. So he died. So what's no right? Right, says to be trustworthy, even though he's dead, we still want him to be. Still wants to be considered. The Gazlan who died still wants to be remembered as a trustworthy person. Again, so if Karl B'nei Gazlan, we'll understand. They'll just call Karl B'nei. The children will end up calling him the children of a Gazlan. So how does that change? El ikminayu diyayiv mamatana. The difference is if it was given as a gift. So what does that mean? So it was given over, not that the Galson